big as the wall that you need to climb is the one that you build in your mind. Some power.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Broward Exchange. It has been a long time no see everybody, and we are back. We are digital, we are trapped inside of computers. That's why we've been missing for so long, but now we're back. I am your
Hell yeah.
co-host Nick, and with me I have Lewis. Introduce
What's
yourself,
up?
Lewis.
Louis Canessa. I am a computer science student right now, a former musician, and um, and yeah, just a music lover, music fan overall.
Same. Music Lovers was the code name for the, for the podcast that we decided not to go for.
There was a lot that we decided. I like the Broward Exchange.
Yeah, ironically, I don't live in Broward anymore.
Oh, true. Now we
I,
got to change it. What's the Orlando County?
Orange County.
Orange Exchange?
We were
Does that?
never in. We were never in Broward.
Oh,
We
true. We were
recorded in Miami.
we were in Miami recording the first.
The first rendition in Miami, but our souls are in Broward, and that's what matters.
Yes, exactly.
All right, for today and for the foreseeable future, we're going to be doing a little what we call the album roundabout, which is where I bring an album, Lewis brings an album. We're going to talk about it one at a time,
hmm
and we're going to go into the artistry, the songwriting, what we love about the album. I think here, just real quick, Lewis, we should go into like, what is it that we look for in music? Like, what do you like? Quickly describe what you like in an album
What I
or in just
like in
music.
um honestly, there's like this thing. First of all, I feel like music is a very personal art form, and it can be done with and it's like also like, well, it's personal, but at the same time you could have a team on it. So it could be one guy or it can be 50 guys. And it's not like a book where it's just the one dude, right? And maybe an editor or maybe a co-author, or and it's not like a movie where you need like a small army.
Yeah,
And having that range allows, first of all, a lot of collaboration. You get people's um, artistic tastes be in dialogue with each other, and I think that's usually like the mark of good music. And even with like really great songwriters, they understand that when they hire a musician to work on their songs, they must engage with what that musician enjoys playing or what that musician thinks is good, or else what's going to come out is forced or rigid or just like it doesn't have the attention to detail.
and as a
Um,
listener, you'll feel that.
yeah,
You can feel when they're melding together and the band is tight.
yeah,
Yeah,
and also because of that, you get their overall artistic taste, and this usually lets someone, at least me as a listener, I get much more of a sense of their musical culture, and not just this guy's idea of music or this guy's idea of music, but they're usually representing some sort of like, I don't know, a salsa artist. He might have his own taste in salsa, but the music he produces is says something about the culture, whether he wants to go with the culture or against the culture. And that's probably one of the biggest things I love about music is I'm peering into other people's cultures in real time in a way that they feel is representative of them. It's not like through some cultural lens, uh, some I don't know, like um,
like you're traveling. Like when you
yeah, like I'm
travel,
traveling. Like I'm not
you're just
seeing this
getting like
through
a
like
random snapshot.
I'm not seeing this through like in a documentary sort of sense or in a secondary sort of sense, or it's not like some like piece of literature in which I need a whole lot of context in order to appreciate it. I'm getting viscerally their culture in real time.
You know, it's curated by them in a way.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. For me, I like the artistry. I like getting impressed. Like, damn, they really wrote that shit.
Oh yeah.
Like, so for me, I really like albums that are conceptual, but also very like tight and concise. Like, so good where you couldn't take out a song, you couldn't add a song. I can't even conceive a way that you could have made the album differently. It's just like the writer, the musician had their mission, and they just executed it perfectly. And that's what I 100% really admire albums that do that.
That are
And
perfect from
that's
beginning
what
to
I
end,
look
of
for.
course.
Huh?
They're good from beginning to end.
Yeah, but it's not just good because it's like thematic, and it's like perfectly wrapped in a way
Okay.
to whatever the artist wants to put. And I think that will segue us very well into the album I brought today,
Hmm.
which is Funeral by Arcade Fire. So I have heard this album for a long time, since I was a kid, and I didn't like it that much. Now I know Lewis is very familiar with this. I tend to not like my favorite albums the first time I listen to them, and then I
I'm the
listen
same
to it
way.
over,
So yeah.
and then I hear it, and I'm like, I like brainwash myself into loving it, but it's not brainwash. It's real love, but it's didn't like it at first. Thought it was boring.
Hmm.
Now recently, in times, I have fallen in love with this album because I realize it fulfills this mission of being a very tight conceptual album. But let's go into the details of this album.
Hmm.
So, recorded in 2003, released in 2004, Arcade Fire is a Canadian Montreal band.
Hmm.
The lead singer, Win Butler, originally from Texas, moves over to Canada. As I was saying, they're from Canada, and if anyone's familiar with them, they're very much like indie rock, kind of dance pop, kind of soft music.
Hmm.
So, band has 7 people in them. Huge band, very orchestrated. All of them can play insane amounts of instruments. I'm talking they're like when you look at the Wikipedia, like the arrangements section, each one has got like at least 3, 4 instruments under their belt, and that
Oh
makes a lot of
wow.
sense. And that makes a lot of sense. Also, album incredibly orchestrated yet indie. Lewis, I want you to give a guess on how much this album cost to be made.
Oh, that's a good one. Cause
It's especially you have experience in producing something, and you've
yeah.
heard it, so it's very orchestrated.
No, and
How much?
it's I know recording strings is very very difficult. And the drums sound really clean. Very very dry. There's no room sound. I'm gonna go on a limb and say 300,000.
10 grand. Ten
No,
grand.
what?
Ten
No, get the fuck out of here.
grand. Ten grand.
Wait, hold on.
And you say there's no room sound. What's interesting is half of this album was recorded in their apartments, the lead singer's apartments.
That's insane. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's
That's
insane.
because it's got such a clean tone. Like, are they? Well, would you know if they're like tracking it or they're doing like a live take or um
That I don't know. I know it's mostly done analog for a lot of the album.
for, for 10 grand in analog like mix and master? That's wow.
And crazy, and it took a year to make,
Yeah.
and most of the album was written in a month. So then it took a year to record.
When you
And the
say
reason
written, like, do you mean like he had the songs or like from beginning to end it was like Is like within a month he came in no songs and then came out the other end with songs.
I mean, you know how it is. I'm sure he had like songs in his mind, but this album came from something, and it came from the reason why it's called Funeral is that multiple of their family members of the band died before the album was, conceived of, I guess. And that was what greatly inspired them to go and start writing these songs. I'm sure maybe before they had like the ideas of the songs, they just didn't know what they were going to be about and stuff until that happened to them. Specifically, three family members died. The lead singer's grandparents, grandpa. The second lead singer's Regine's grandparents, and another band member's grandparents. All of them passed away like within a series of each other before this album was made. So they hit the books and they wanted to make basically an ode to them, and that's what this album is. That's why it's called Funeral. That's why it's very sad. And I think that's what the concept of this is. Like the meaning of this album, as I think, is an incredibly beautiful take on childhood innocence lost. The idea of like a child growing up, and this album almost shows the progression of this in a way, where you are clear-headed, you're so imaginative, it's so beautiful, and this album just shows it like progressing into adulthood essentially. Right? And what do you think are the influences for Arcade Fire? Just what you heard of.
I was gonna ask you. I hear some Strokes. I hear some Interpol. Okay, listening to his record, and not doing any research on it. I and I did do that on purpose, by the way. I'm not lazy, bro.
Yeah, that's how we do
I
it here.
purposely went into
I didn't do much
putting it
research.
blind.
I didn't do much research on Lewis's album because the point is, I'm gonna orate this one. He orates the next one. So everyone
And
else.
I legitimately thought that this was from the early 2000s New York scene, most specifically because of what the drummer is doing.
I
And
can hear that. I can hear that.
yeah, that like post-punk revival sort of thing.
That's why
Um,
dancey at times. You
yeah,
can hear it. Yeah.
and at the same time, it also has the like singer-songwriter feel that you will hear from later bands like Mumford and Sons. And
Yeah.
like seeing that bridge was very cool. Very very neat. I don't know. It's like such a great representation of what rock music sounded in 2000, in the 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really well. I feel like it was transitioning right here
Yeah.
because it's not too similar to those contemporaries you listed, like the Strokes and Interpol, because it's not very how do I say it? It's not like post punky in a way.
No,
It's not
because
too
the
dark.
orchestration is
It's
clean.
orchestrated. Yeah,
The
it's because of the orchestration.
the the only thing I could like say is like post punkish, like definitely is like Power Out.
Yeah, Power Out for sure.
But
It's more
everything
like
else
Rebellion and stuff like
is
that.
is like the what is like the transformation of indie rock from a I guess a basement punk thing, a
Yeah,
basement band thing to a singer-songwriter thing.
yeah. This album kind of really puts that transition. It goes from like the Smiths into, I feel like, and this is one of their big influences. It's what Neutral Milk Hotel did, but like extrapolated
Yeah.
in a way.
Okay.
And
Now I
you
can
see what I
definitely
mean?
see that now that you pointed it out. I didn't make that connection. Um,
And the microphones too.
Now the microphones is interesting. What they specifically named it that as an influence, or is there something you noticed?
That's more something I noticed. Neutral Milk Hotel they did. The microphones, I feel like I can hear. I can hear it in the orchestration. I can hear it in how it's produced, and also the singer-songwriter kind of thing with the microphones.
Yeah. There's some vocals there that are definitely trying to do. Um, I don't know. It's like they're manic. It's manic.
Yeah,
It's pitched up high. It's belting. And how do I put it? It's not exactly harsh, but it's not always the cleanest. It gives a
I
lot
like
of
to say
soul.
it's not. This isn't an influence they listed, but it's doing the Pixies thing, where you have the lead singer is a male, and he's like just pouring his soul, and you're just feeling like like literally you're touching his soul, his essence, his emotion, and everything. And then there's the female background singer who's like angelic in the back.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's they listened to the Pixies and saw that, but I felt that, and I feel like that's just the Pixies' overarching influence on sort of alt rock, indie rock, all that stuff.
It's also your
Yeah,
taste really showing. I've noticed that a lot of albums you enjoy have manic male singers and then very pretty soft female vocals. So yeah, no, it definitely fitted. Like as I was listening to this, I'm like, yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's a Nick album.
that's a Nick
That's a
album.
Nick album. Other influences that they have listed are David Bowie, which you
Obviously,
can hear. Yeah,
right.
you can hear it in the vocals. This album, not too much, but if you listen to their later albums, you could definitely hear they go a little darker, they go a little funkier, they go more into dance kind of thing with the later albums. You can hear the Bowie in the later albums more.
Hmm.
Other influences that they listed, Talking Heads.
Yeah.
Also, you can hear it in the vocals a bit and in the dancing and the funkiness
Uh,
that you hear a little bit more later.
There's also the thing that both of the singers are usually what they try to do is they both of those bands they conceive of songs with dark themes, sad themes in danceable ways. So like both Bowie and David Byrne, and
Yeah, they
I
do the
always
salsa
liked.
thing.
Hmm?
They do the salsa thing where
The
you
sal
gotta cry a
exactly.
bit.
It's white boy salsa, and I I definitely hear and both of them their lyricism is usually really simple. It's very simple everyday language. It's always imagery that's surreal, but everyone has had it before. Like I've I know
Yeah,
for sure I've always had that like um that dream or that fantasy of having a tunnel that connects to my friend's house and
yeah.
I can hang out with them whenever I wanted. That's something that's like universal, and no one can really like point to where it came from. It's just like it's part of the collective unconscious. People will always like at
Oh,
least kids in a modern age will have that fantasy because they live in suburbia.
yeah. And I'll use that to segue into talking about the album itself and how it conveys this concept of childhood innocence lost.
Hmm.
The songs "Neighborhood," 1, 2, 3, 4. My opinion is that these songs are supposed to be about like a kid's point of view, and that's where you get that kind of simple lyricism that you're talking about, but mostly very like what's the term,
Hmm.
relatable imagery. And I think that's something that this album does so well. So well. It
Hmm.
really hits like the childhood feeling that we all share. And each
Absolutely.
song is like a progression, a sort of, and like has that childhood like imagination in its lyricism. A good example of this is the second song, Leica. And I love Leica. That's one of my favorite songs in the album.
Hmm.
Leica is supposed to be about these, I guess, these two kids. They have an older brother who is causing like he's causing a disturbance in the family. He's a troublemaker. He's making his mom cry. He's getting into fights with his dad. But the kids don't really know what's going on. They love their older brother, so they're looking at it like he's going on an adventure. He's That's why he's always leaving the house. He's going on an adventure, and he scratched his names off all the records. He tore his images off all the papers, and he's gonna go do something great. And he's gonna be like Leica. His mom should have named him Leica. For anyone who doesn't know, Leica is the dog that the Russians sent into space. But they sent Leica into space with no provisions on it's gonna return. So Leica ended up dying in space. And that allegory of Leica It gives me like a Kid Icarus kind of vibe, flying too close to the sun. You know what I'm saying?
It's you could say like that, but it's also like a thing of like Leica was a planned mission in which the dog was never supposed to make it back, and it
Yeah,
does have this feeling that that Alexander, like the older brother, like his plan was to definitely not come back.
yeah,
He rather die than come back. You know?
yeah. That's why the mom should have named him Leica.
Hmm. Yeah. So why? Okay, we have these like four neighborhoods, and then we have this song right in the middle of these four. And I was wondering the significance of it and what the song title means.
Una Sans Luminaire.
Hmm.
It's kind of just like it's a bridge transition song. It means a year without light, and the next song is Powers Out, which is about
Ah,
yeah.
nice.
But that does let me talk about this is a Montreal band, so French themes are present here.
Hmm.
Also, the second lead singer, Regine, she is her family's Haitian, and that's why there's a song later called Haiti,
Hmm.
and that's like mostly in French. So there's like
Okay.
some
Yeah, yeah,
French
yeah, yeah,
influences going
yeah.
on here, you know? Yeah.
And
But all these songs, I don't want to spoil too much for the audience. I would like you guys to go and listen to all the neighborhood songs, but something like Power Out, it's about the power going out, big blizzard setting in town. All the parents freeze over. Like those are the lyrics he uses. So the kids go out and they gotta get the power back. That's what the lyrics kind of directly mean, like a little
hmm.
story like that. But to me, like that song conveys this feeling you have as a kid where your parents are trying to hide something from you to protect their innocence, whether it's like they're struggling with the bills or someone in the family member did something bad and they don't want to tell you because you're a kid and you don't understand it. They don't want to ruin like your perception of the world. But when you're a kid and your parents are doing something like that, you want to know.
Hmm.
Like you know what I'm talking about, Lewis? Like you want to like you're like, why are you hiding this from me? You want to
There.
know these things and you have like this sort of this like morbid curiosity in a way as a
Hmm.
kid where you don't know it's morbid but you just want to know and you almost feel bad that your parents are hiding things from you, and that's what Power Out kind of has that feeling in the lyrics from that, and the way he like sings his lyrics has that feeling from the kid's point of view.
Yeah, and there's a real sense of urgency in the song.
Yeah,
I did interpret the lyrics somewhat differently because the parents freezing over and the kids having to find the power themselves. I don't know. For me, it gave me this imagery of when I was well, even like when I was like a younger man, and I don't know. I would see like my older relatives. They don't take up new hobbies. They don't feel like super passionate about doing new stuff. They got
yeah,
their
there's old
life,
dog
and they
can't
just
learn old dog new tricks.
yeah, they just watch, they watch TV, they work, they do the things they got to do for the kids, and that's life. And then as it goes on, they're frozen over. They're kind of like in place, and especially to like when you're really young and you want to travel and you want to learn, you want to grow, you just see that it's like, damn, that's depressing as fuck, dude.
Yeah,
I don't want to be like that. I don't want to like freeze over. I want to go out there and see what I can find for myself, you know?
yeah, I'm gonna go restore the power. I'm gonna go on an adventure like
Exactly.
Alexander.
Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah, no, and also like I definitely got well, the themes I picked up were the family themes. The family tree imagery all throughout is fantastic.
yeah.
Um, the um, I don't know. It's I can't tell how much of it is like a cohesive story and how much of it is just it's that relatable. It's really like and I can put myself in those shoes.
Yeah, I would say it's like a story. It's more just like a theme that
Yeah.
progresses, you know? And that's where you kind of get like the two different kinds of concept albums. You got like your narrative ones, like your Ziggy Stardust's that are stories or like The Wall and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And then you got like your songs in the key of life for this album or like Loveless in a way, which is more like just here's a theme and we're gonna explore this theme,
It's
right?
it's like aesthetically consistent. I think that there should be two words, like were to be like we can. I feel like there should be like the strict like it's a concept, and there's like if you listen to it out of order, you're a terrible person, and then there's the aesthetic, the aesthetic. There's like it's aesthetically consistent. Is like the aesthetic of this album, the atmosphere of this album is there at the first 10 seconds and it stays. And the once the band is done with that album, it moves on to some other very consistent atmosphere or
Like another
aesthetic.
piece of the pie of yeah, of that theme to talk about.
Hmm.
This album has the because the neighborhood songs to me are very like childhood POV is the first half, and then the second half we can go into when you talk about the family tree that comes from the song Wake Up. And Wake Up
Hmm.
is really about like now whoever's singing is an adult and they're looking to their parents, they're looking at, their relatives and they're realizing that they're growing older and they're
Hmm.
not that kid anymore. They're not that kid in the first album. They don't have that imagination that they had back then.
Hmm.
And they're waking up to that. Oh, and that's a sad thing, but I love this song because it takes a very strong mode of acceptance to that notion in the lyrics. Because he says, "I guess we'll just have to adjust." And then the
Hmm.
song itself is so grandiose and like
It's
revelatory.
fantastic.
And you just feel it feels like acceptance. The song, it's just like you absorb it. It's beautiful.
Uh, Two things. One, I really like the detail that all the childhood songs are inside A, all the adult songs are inside B. If you look at the wiki,
Yeah,
that's where the cut is. And second, Crown of Love is probably one of the most creative ballads I've ever heard.
yeah,
There's so many things that it does that other ballads don't do. Like other ballads take forever for the lyrics to come in because the atmosphere really has to build up. Like the
yeah.
primary example I'm gonna give is uh, the end of Station to Station. What was the song? Hold up.
Wild as the wind.
Wild as the Wind is that's a minute before we hear the first lyrics. And then like
Yeah,
you listen to Crown of Love and it's lyric from the start. It gets through like half a verse
yeah,
and then it jumps into the chorus, right? And usually the chorus like at least like in a typical ballad you would have it maybe like by the second third part of the track because it's supposed to
yeah.
be like the climax. So like you're coming to the conclusion. And it's like nope, we're already moved on to the chorus. And if you're looking at the track and you're like, what else is there? And guess what? There's a dance outro that changes
Yeah,
time
like this
signature.
also.
And I just wanted to point out I really 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 like that song. I thought it was
Yeah,
super like there's so many things that like this album does without going into super like experimental like oh we're just gonna throw in noise or we're gonna just throw in stuff that is not typically
yeah.
pleasant as a way of being experimental. It's like no, they're thinking very critically about the song structure here, and
And I
yeah,
greatly appreciate it because I've heard so many indie albums where it is just I'm gonna throw in noise right here and I'm gonna
and
start
we're
fucking
experimental
with the
now.
knobs on my thing. We're experimental now. We're gonna go crazy, and I like that. I feel like every piece of every structure of the song, every segment of a song, to the orders of the song of this album are handpicked and placed, and they knew exactly how they were gonna make this album.
Exactly, exactly.
Crown of Love when it fits on the sort of the track, like the progression of the concept or whatever.
Yeah.
It is the ballad song, and I feel like that is the song that begins the second half, and it's about you grow up and you're an adult now, you fall in love, and now you have to live with all of the things from your childhood that make you, and that's why the lyrics have this feeling of like someone who's falling in love but they're very broken and
Hmm.
they feel like they don't deserve this love That's why it has lyrics like if you still want me, please forgive me. The crown of love has fallen from me. Like it's very sad. It's
Yeah,
it's a heart it's a tearjerker.
it is. How do you think
How do
that?
you feel?
No, no, you
You
go.
can go. Go ahead. I was gonna just ask you, how do you feel about the guitar tones on this album? Because it's one of my favorite fucking things, especially in the beginning of Wake Up. Just the way the noise is right there. The da 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 da
Oh yeah, yeah,
da
yeah.
da da.
Um, no, I actually what I enjoyed a lot about the guitars is that they're they're punchy, but they're not scathing. They're not super sharp in the mix.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the overall the album retains this very warm sound throughout. But then you have the guitars all the way high up, and I've once again for $10,000 that's kind of insane.
yeah,
Especially there's the 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 rhythm guitar on Neighborhood 2. Um,
yeah,
the way it's slightly it has okay, so there's this so when you're playing guitar, there's these things called harmonics, right? At certain parts of the guitar, you can play two notes by not pressing down on the fret. You just let your finger sort of like bend off, and it creates a harmonic. Now, if you
yeah,
let your finger stay on, you can suggest a harmonic, which isn't as audible. And then what they're doing there on that track, on that guitar track, is some of the chords are that suggested harmonic sound, and it gives it like a sort of like bell uh, tone to the guitar that um, it adds so much. It's and I think that really just highlights that when they were designing this album, the guitars weren't thought of as the star. They were thought of as another piece of the percussion puzzle. And they're like, this is a dance
yeah.
album. We got to keep this thing moving ahead at all times. And I think the whoever did guitars on this album understood that very well.
It's another piece of the orchestration as a whole
Yeah,
too. For some songs like Wake Up and whatnot, like the wall of sound they build is phenomenal.
phenomenal. Phenomenal is the right
Phenomenal.
word.
Yeah, I like some of the little like motifs this album has that like guide you towards it's like a psychological thing where they make you feel however they want to feel. Like in the first song, it's supposed to be about in tunnels, it's supposed to be about like childhood imagination, as you were saying, that kids want to build the tunnels to go see their friends and whatnot. There's like this little like music box kind of like piano thing going on
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in that
exactly.
song.
Yeah.
It's very like fantasy, like imagination land kind of feel.
Hmm.
And his whole album has these little like motifs on that. Like Crown of Love feels very like wedding kind of
Yeah,
motifs going in there.
yeah,
And I feel like
definitely.
and that really adds to like the relativeness, not only of the lyrics, but like these motifs are like subliminal messaging you or something like that
It's
to
so
make you feel
intriguing
that.
because these subliminal, like what you're saying is correct, but when I'm, there's albums that like I listen to and they're very obviously like daytime albums or tropical albums or like
Yeah.
summertime albums, right? And this one, I really can't put my finger, even though it creates a great atmosphere, even though there's a lot of suggestive instrumentation, I really can't put my finger on where it wants me to be, and I think it lends itself to that this like it's universal, it's universalness.
I think it's a winter album
You
that
think it's a winter
turns
album?
into a spring album. It turns into a spring
Okay,
album. It
okay,
melts.
all right. No,
It melts.
are you saying like gradually or like side A, side B?
Like yeah, side A, side B, it melts. So
Okay. No, I can see that, especially because a lot of the water imagery, a lot of the tree imagery comes later on, and the first
yeah.
half has a lot of like I'm stuck at home imagery.
Yeah, power's out. There's a blizzard freezing over. Tunnels digging through the snow, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and speaking of the tropical, this lets me go into another song, Haiti. Oh my God, Haiti. I used to not like the song at all. I used to like skip all the time. I
Why?
was wrong. I was wrong.
Was it because it was in
I don't know
French?
because I'm like this is a yeah indie rock boom boom dance yeah Interpol woo and then you hear Haiti and it's like here's the beach song and it's all tropical and I didn't like it for some reason but now it is my favorite song in the album.
Hmm.
This one is entirely sung by Regine and as I said her grandparents passed away before this album and she is Haitian, so the song is an ode to her relatives in Haiti and her parents fled Haiti and moved to Canada. And I want to talk about some of the lyrics on this one because they're in French, and might not you might probably did not catch the lyrics because they're in French. But one of the things she says in French is, "My never born cousins haunt Duvalier's nights," and Duvalier was a dictator in France that her parents fled from. And she's saying there, "My never born cousins haunt Duvalier's nights." She's talking about how Duvalier killed her aunt and uncle and they were never able to have kids, her cousins, and their spirits will haunt him. And I think that right there shows what I love about this song is that when you listen to it, it's like a tropical, shoegazy, very ethereal. The lyrics are just wisping around, so it's like spiritual in a way, and it's really like we have a random shoegazy dream song in the album, and I like it. But then when you hear the lyrics, it's all like stuff like literally hexing this dictator's family with her family spirits and people running away from soldiers. The lyrics are so violent in a way, talking about what happened in Haiti. And there's like this strong parallel between the two, and it makes me think of like when you're thinking of where your family is from, and as both of us know this because we're both both of our families are immigrants. You know, there's the reality of where your family's from, and then there's the memory of your head of where your family's from.
Okay.
And I feel like this song conveys that memory, like it is that memory. That's why it's so wispy and ethereal.
Yeah, because the memory is here. The actual place doesn't come with you. There was this is a sidetrack, but there's actually I read this very interesting article about how immigrant culture gets outdated
Yeah,
very quickly, and what immigrants take to another part of the world, it's kind of like stuck in time. It's kind of stuck in that
yeah,
influence, and then that country like kind of like speeds things up, and it was very noticeable in this article was talking about Thai culture and how Thai culture here in the U.S. is way more conservative than Thai culture in Thailand because
yeah,
they just got stuck with 60s Thai culture, which is when most immigrants came, and
yeah,
they never so if you were to and if those immigrants are to come back to Thailand, there's a lot of like slang that they haven't caught up with. There's a lot of cultural norms they haven't caught up with. Most people from Thailand will probably um, say that those people are very uptight, very reserved compared to the Thai people nowadays. Um, I
yeah,
yeah, and so like that memory thing is very interesting because like if you leave a country in the middle of that violence, that is the influence that stays with you. Is the how like you talk to uh, like Cuban immigrants and they who came from like during the 60s, and that is a very different culture than guys who came during the 90s, you know?
yeah.
So
I think a
I
great
totally feel
example
where
of
you're
that,
coming from. Yeah.
like Italians, the ones that went long, long time ago, super conservative, super Catholic.
Hmm.
But if you go to Italy now, it's not. It's pretty like liberal in Italy today.
Yeah. And there's a lot
Yeah,
of
it's definitely a regional.
Europeanness. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Europeanness. It's definitely regional in Italy. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's very Catholic parts of Italy, but
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah.
definitely much more liberal than the Italian immigrants who moved here in America are today. You're only getting a snapshot of it. But I think what's interesting is taking that idea, but taking it to something traumatic, like what happened to Haiti.
Exactly.
Your
Yeah.
memory of Haiti is now completely tied, or her memory of Haiti is now completely tied to that dictator and what that dictator did to her family.
Hmm.
And that song is encapsulating all of that. And I think underappreciated song in the album. I think that's amazing.
Do you think that that was a conscious choice to make it in French in order to hide the brutalness of the lyrics?
I think it was more to make the song truer to what it's supposed to be, which is an ode
Okay.
to the people in Haiti. So if you want to make that song for them, put it in French, right?
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
And I really like that. I love the idea of languages, like various languages on the same record.
Yeah.
There's it just first of all it shows like the inherent beauty in some languages, and sometimes it's inherent beauty in different ways. I know the way Spanish is beautiful is very different from how French is beautiful. It's very different from how Russian is beautiful or Japanese is beautiful. And I always really dig artists that like kind of lean into that. They understand that like certain languages have particular sounds, and even more so, as you're saying, is like there's a conscious choice of like what is my audience, who am I projecting this to, what
Yeah.
statement am I making, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a Montreal, Canada band, so making a song in French is perfectly reasonable. But I
Which I
do look at,
thought that was it. I never expected this to actually have anything
yeah, and it's
to
a powerful
do.
tool.
Yeah,
It's a powerful tool to be able to have to be able to sing in multiple languages. I mean, you know that because the band you ran was in two languages. So
yeah.
yeah,
I just really like that shit.
yeah, yeah. So that's Haiti.
Hmm.
Next song, Rebellion. I don't have too much to say on it because it's mostly I feel like the pop hit of that is the most Interpol indie rock post punk song, Rebellion. It doesn't really tie too much to the concept that much. It's kind of like an ode to it's kind of against sheepish thinking is what I'm getting from it. Like don't listen to marketing, their lies. You know, don't listen to this, their lies. There's also like don't listen to all the stuff your parents say, their
Hmm.
lies, you know, and then rebel. It's kind of just more like an anthem kind of song.
Hmm.
And it was the number one hot pop hit of the album, and ain't nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just gotta have your pop bangers.
You gotta have your pop bangers. If you're in a
You
you're
gotta have your
making a
pop
pop
bangers.
record, it can't just be deep cuts.
All right, yeah. You can't just have everybody crying. You can't. Even Willie Colon knew you can't just have everyone cry. You gotta get the girls down on the dance floor. They gotta
Right.
go. You know, you can't. Yeah. Even in like what's going on, Marvin Gaye, you gotta have right on.
Yeah, you gotta
You
have
got.
something. You gotta have something for the record executive being like, why am I paying this much for this record?
All right, great. Which one's gonna be on the Spotify playlist? Oh, that one. Okay, that's good.
Okay, okay, that's the only
There you
one I'm
go.
listening to.
All right, there you go. That's all right. I'm happy with my financial decision.
Exactly.
Yeah, but also when you're constructing an album, you can't have Haiti, which is like such an emotional piece, and then go right into the last song of this album in the back seat without having something there, or else it's just cry and then more cry. You know what I
And
mean?
more cry. And yeah,
Yeah, more cry. So the last song in the back seat, absolute tearjerker. I This song has made me tear up. It's so powerful because it puts everything that the album is about all in just one track.
yeah.
And the idea of the song is that, you know, you're a kid, you're in the backseat of the car, you don't have to worry about anything. You have no responsibility. It doesn't matter. You're just in the back seat looking out the window, enjoying the view and whatnot. And all that ends when she says Alice died. Alice is her mom who passed away, and now she transitions from it being in the back seat to the front seat, and now she has to drive, and now she has to deal with that responsibility that Alice did, and now she has to deal with all this stuff, and it's sung so beautifully. So just the lamentation that's going on is so powerful, and it is an absolute tearjerker,
The
and
the
it's a
vocals
perfect finale
are
to the album.
insane on this track. They're actually goosebump inducing.
Goosebump inducing.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you have a condition when you listen to this.
Yeah, 100%.
Powerful.
No, it's great. And yeah, no, I I thought that the French had nothing to do with Haiti. I didn't think it would have anything to do with Haiti. I'm surprised you picked the band from Montreal. At the same time that I picked the band from Montreal from the early
Whoa.
2000s with
Wait,
strings.
I didn't even remember that was
Yeah,
the same one.
and I think I beat you with
So,
the band size.
oh, damn. Well, before we go to your any closing feelings
Any
on this
closing
album?
remarks? If you like, um, if you're a if you have a hurt inner child, but you also love dancing, this album is for you. This album, like, I
Yeah.
cannot recommend this album
Yeah,
enough. I
this literally made for you.
I'm gonna be so real. It's this album has also been one of those that like is grown on me. Like the first time I listened to it, I was like, it's pretty good. It's you know
Yeah.
it does its thing and um but like really going back and listening to the lyricism. I think the lyricism is the part that won me over the most is um and I'm actually intrigued to explore other Arcade Fire albums. I know that they won't be as good just based off
I'm just gonna tell you
knowing what
right
what has come since and what people have told me about Arcade Fire, but I still really like the style of the lyricism. I'm just glad that it's rock lyrics that aren't um, that are much more like they're thinking about life outside of just the immediate experience. There's so many like
now.
rock albums that it's like the experience of being like in your mid 20s in the city that the band is from,
The Strokes.
and you know, and it can be happy or sad. It can be like the
Yeah.
full party album or like a heartbreak album. But like, I'm not getting an album from the perspective of a kid or the perspective of, oh shit, I'm an aging adult now.
Yeah.
Um, and having that both be on the same record in a cohesive manner, in a way that doesn't feel. I mean, I know you said that like it feels like it melts down into it, but there's even within in the backseat, we're constantly thrown back into that childhood thinking, and in the same way that
Yeah.
as an adult, like I know I do sometimes, where I feel like a kid again, either in good or bad ways, regularly, and that's
Yeah.
part of the human experience.
It's something that will never escape you, the inner child, and you're
No,
always gonna have to deal with it. And you're always gonna have to sort of, especially if it's a broken inner child, you always are gonna have to sort of care to it in a way. And this
exactly.
album really puts that feeling. It's all it is doing is it is examining this feeling and fully fleshing out and making it beautiful and putting it to your ears.
Mm.
And that I have to think amazing. One of my favorite indie rock albums ever. I really like what you were saying before, how it's not like the Strokes where it's just like, hey, I'm in New York and I'm in the club and some girl broke
Yeah,
up with me, I'm
and
sad. Like it's
and we're
not
not
just like a
Strokes haters, by
typical.
the way. I wanna
We're
be
not
clear.
Strokes
I
haters.
love the Strokes, but
Yeah, yeah, like I get it. There's a time and a place for that. But
yeah,
I like somebody was like, what if I made an indie rock album that it was very this is very like introspective. Like it's diving into something different.
yeah.
And it's very like it's like psychological in a way. It's examining things instead of just um sort of documenting the moment.
Hey, it's
It's
not
kind of
five
pulling it
ballads.
back in time. Yeah, and it's not five ballads. It's two. It's three.
It's
Fucking little
actually
bro.
two because one of them counts as like two of them count as half ballads.
Oh yeah, because they have to have the dance pop part on it.
Exactly, so it's actually two ballads if you do all the math.
Yeah, but I think that whole making an album that's very different, still incredibly conceptual, is what I look for. I love that, and 10 out of 10. Love this album. And we're back, everybody. Just discussed Arcade Fire's funeral. And now we are going to move on to Lewis's album of choice. Lewis, what have you brought to us today?
I've brought Godspeed You, Black Emperor, the album Lift Your Skinny Fist Like a Tennis to Heaven. We're just about our Montreal albums with hands on them. So
Yeah,
I picked this
yeah,
one. You just gotta hand it to these Canadians, you know? Um,
yeah.
but I picked this album and I really love this album. Because it's got a lot of features that I usually am a sucker for. Uh, super long songs, super atmospheric songs. Very very almost like vivid, naturalistic sort of sound coming in. So it's not super robotic. It's like organically grows and goes from one section to another. Um, in this way that feels like it's natural growing. It's found out in nature. And and then heavy existential and spiritual themes. And what I'm really intrigued by this album, and I think it's like such a great album to open like the 21st century up, is because it combines um, two musical train of thoughts that were really really big in 20th century music, and it combines them perfectly. And those two train of thoughts are modern classical music, most noticeably minimalism, and uh, and noise music, most notably noise rock, especially from uh, bands that are like really punkish. And
Like the Sonic Youth, as we were talking about.
so there's Sonic Youth, there's Velvet Underground, there's bands like Fugazi, Slint. Those bands are, from what I can tell, as being fans of those bands, they're not taking a whole lot from classical music, but they're developing a lot of ideas that are very in line with these modern classical composers, as to what they want to explore musically. And
I think with that, to connect
yeah,
those two things, I want to ask you, can you define post rock without using the word crescendo?
if we're to boil it down, because this is a very tough question, but if we're to boil it down, I've always seen post rock as um, music in that is it's it's music in which the guitar it both plays the main role but is also an ambient instrument, and
It's there for the texture.
it's there for a texture, it's there for the crescendo, but it's
Oh no! No.
oh! No, but there's it moves the guitar, thinking of the guitar as an instrument that you can make some weird sounds on it, but you're mostly playing notes, chords, lines, right? Sort of like in the Jimi Hendrix sort of way of like he's on a blues solo and then he does like a weird UFO sound and then he comes right back into it, right? And that's
Yeah,
super cool. But this is like post rock is very strictly like the guitar. We're just using the guitar to get sounds out of it, much more than
I like to think of it.
the traditional notes. Go
I
on.
like to think of it is that if you use the guitar like an entire string arrangement for classical,
Hmm.
not just like a violin, but like the whole
The whole,
shebang in a
yeah,
way. Yeah,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I think that's a way you can define post. I always thought of post rock is, what if we take the typical rock instruments and we flip them in a way that wasn't rock, to where it's like you're kind of making rock with a different frame of thought of how to use the instruments. Like drums drive many post rock songs in a
Mhm.
way, and they're always in the front. There's no lyrics, and if there is lyrics in post rock, it's usually a guy like talking or it's like sound recordings, like in this album,
Or
or
completely made up language like Sigur Rós.
like completely made up language, like alien, literally alien gibberish, like
It,
Sigur
it
Rós.
it's almost becomes like everything about post rock is like this impenetrable wall of texture, and even more
Yes,
so than like shoegaze, because shoegaze still has pop hooks and melodies, and like
yeah,
the songs
lyrics,
usually are not longer than 5 minutes, and you can put
yeah.
them on a rock playlist and be chilling. If you put on Godspeed in a rock playlist,
You clear in the party, like what's
yeah,
going
yeah,
on?
exactly. At least for 20 minutes, the party's dead.
The party is questioning their reality, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's you bringing up classical is I feel like where it all comes from.
hmm
How does that relate to specifically Godspeed You Black Emperor?
So there's a lot of there's a collection of techniques that that Godspeed uses because they have so many members and because they're working with so many textures and rhythms that they pull from what they pull from modern classical. There's two things: po- um, the polyrhythms of minimalism and um, the polyharmony of earlier modern classical. So let me define those terms for laymen.
Yeah.
So polyrhythm is the idea of playing two rhythms, two distinct rhythms that line up occasionally. So if I were to the simplest polyrhythm there is a 4 on 3. So I'm playing 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, and at the same time in a different instrument, I'm playing 3 beats within the same span of time. And what will happen is
Okay.
that for the first beat and the last beat of both of those rhythms, they'll line up. So
The
the
one
first
and the
beat,
threes and the one and the fours.
yeah. So
Yeah.
no, the 1 and 1, the first beat will line up.
Yeah.
Then will come the second beat of the 4, then the second beat of the third, then the third beat of the fourth, and then they line up on the fourth
On the
and
fourth.
third.
Yeah, the fours. Yeah.
So and I can do it right, and it gives it
Yeah.
this like jingly sort of like sound.
Yeah. Kind of how
And
you get like swing in a way.
hmm? Yeah,
It's kind of like how
you
you
get
swing in a
you're
way.
like
Yeah.
passing forth the rhythm.
Yeah.
And minimalism is this movement in classical music in which they just took that shit and ran with it. So you're having like Steve Reich's music for 18 musicians. All 18 of those musicians are playing different rhythms that occasionally line up, and you get this like sort of like frequency thing. If you get enough musicians in on it, you get this almost like frequency thing that like you can't tell which beat is like the dominant one, but you can tell that they're all like syncing up. They're like converging to something, and then they converge out, and then they converge in, and that part also gives it like this like sort of effect that I really enjoy.
Oh
And
yeah. This
then
album definitely like lives.
oh yeah,
Like it breathes and it lives and
it's a very
it
real thing.
inhales. It's a living. This album is an enigma. I always like to describe post rock as that it's not music. It feels like I'm witnessing an event.
Yeah,
Like I'm in a field and I see a plane and it's beautifully in the sky and it blows up and then now it's like I'm watching that in slow motion as this tragedy unfolds before my eyes. That is post rock to me.
right. And
Yeah.
and that's why there's so many similarities with like post rock and how people think of um, more movies than albums. And especially given some of the song lengths, some of the some of the album lengths, especially for this one, right? It's an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's 4 songs. This is
Yeah.
a mini series of sound. This is not this is not a
Yeah.
collection of tunes. Um,
Yeah.
and actually, even more so, I found out during my research that some of the members of Godspeed, when making this record, they're also working as video editors and film editors. And I was like, that makes so much sense. There's so much here that gives this gives the pacing of like almost like a post-apocalyptic movie. You know, it has
Very
really
close.
big highs, really lows, really big lows, and it has this like brooding atmosphere the entire way.
Yeah,
You know how I said like with Arcade Fire, I can't really tell where I am.
yeah,
With this one, I feel like I know like I can feel and see exactly where I am, especially when the field recordings come in because their field recordings are very very clear in their sound. So like if you're listening to headphones, you like almost immediately like, oh my, where am I?
yeah.
You
They
know?
are field recordings. They tie into the atmosphere of whatever the song is really well. Like you kind of like, and the way they always fade in a way to where it's almost like you just kind of appear in the whatever the field recording is.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You're like almost wake up to it, like, and
Like
that
you're
gets
in
me
a
to
dream, and then now yeah. But go ahead, go
no
ahead.
that gets me to my second, which is polyharmony. I may be mispronouncing
Yes.
that, but it's the idea of having two different harmonies at the same time. Um, you so in early in so in classical music, there's like the idea of like you're in this key, and then as classical and like the piece is like symphony in D minor, and you don't move from that D minor. You might go to the equivalent major and down, but like it just like everyone's in that key in that harmony, playing those notes, and then as classical music progressed, we kind of dropped those ideas as we went. It's like, maybe we can switch up the keys. Maybe we can add some notes. Maybe we can make this thing sort of dissonant. And then once we get to the 20th century, we're like, fuck keys. We're doing multiple keys at the same time. And and then there's experiments of trying to do that to create atmosphere. One very one lesser known piece that exemplifies this is Charles Ives. He made a symphony, but he wanted the symphony to feel like you're um, like two competing symphonies. Like he wanted, so his idea was to create a piece that is like two parades that are interrupting each other. So one half of the orchestra plays like a completely different song, different rhythm, different key, and then the other piece of the orchestra slowly comes up, and it's like and it gives it this feeling of like it's sort of interrupted, and also like
Yeah.
it, it gives it like a much more lifelike sort of feel. You're not in this like super clean cut off part of the world. The world is chaotic, and there's like conflicting sounds, and there's conflicting harmonies, and then even more so, Stravinsky took this even further. With he has a ballet called Petrushka, and in the beginning of Petrushka, you have this character going through a marketplace, and as he's going through a marketplace, every single vendor has their own song. So as he goes to
Yeah.
shows up to like I don't know the Middle Eastern vendor, it starts playing Middle Eastern music. But instead of like having the hard cut of like what was a previous vendor's song, that vendor slowly fades out and the new vendor fades in. And he's doing this live. He's
Yeah.
doing it with a
Atmosphere.
live orchestra with the ballet dancers going along to it. And then not just that, as the piece continues, he then harmonizes those different vendors, um, and it creates once again lifelike. And these guys are trying to recreate field recordings classically. There's like you know there's records at the time, but they're first. But like in this is like early 1900s. There's records, but like
Yeah.
you
It's
can't
not.
fit a whole
It.
orchestra doing experimental music in there.
Yeah.
And
And yeah, you can't play that live. That wouldn't fly back then. You know.
Stravinsky had some success with Petrushka because at least with Petrushka it's not super like um it's not super jolting. It's not super disharmonic. Like he does harmonize the vendors after a while. They're in somewhat similar keys. But the Charles Ives, yeah, Charles Ives had a terrible time presenting his music, and he
Yeah.
was kind of forgotten had it not been for Bernstein later on, being like, no, this is like the best American composer to have lived. Um,
Yeah.
and then and now we got to ask ourselves, okay, that's cool, classical music, cool. Uh, how does noise rock fit into this, right?
Yes.
And well, the thing is, if you listen to uh, Sonic Youth, especially the first few records, and you really pay attention to what the guitars are doing, the guitars are doing both of these effects. They are playing in completely different keys. Sometimes even like not like one guitar will be like tuned to like a bunch of microtones, which are notes in between the 12 to 12 that we usually have, and then one guitar is like tuned normally, and they're still interacting. Or and they'll play completely different rhythms that will line eventually, and it creates this like sort of like wavy cascade sort of effect, where it's hard to tell like, and when both guitars have the same tone, you get this like slightly psychedelic sound happening where the music becomes a wall. You stop the normal listener stops being able to imagine a guitar player playing this, and it becomes just texture in their mind. Uh,
Yeah.
and and yeah, no, and I think like God, this album does both of those things incredibly well.
Yeah. I know what that comes with the noise. The only fun fact I know is that some of the guitars are played with a screwdriver,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's how they make
yeah.
some of the sounds on this album.
No, there's some
And that
sounds that
reminds
like,
me of like
dude, I have no idea how to make them. Like I
this
have
album.
absolutely zero idea.
They actually didn't make anything. They opened up a portal to the void, and they
I
just put a
I,
microphone up there.
I believe that. I believe that 100%. Now, but um, that's you asked earlier, like, what's one of the things I look for in music that I really enjoy?
Yeah.
And one of the things I love is music that breaks that sort of visualization. Like, um, I, as a music maker, have gone to the somewhat bad habit of listening to a record and just putting on that producer mind, just being like, how would I make this? Who's playing what instrument? Um, what type of microphones are they using? How would someone come up with this sort of lyrics? You know, who are they taking from? And I love albums that like it's so those questions are so unanswerable that like the producer brain just goes, you know what? I'm gonna go. You have fun with this noise. I can't do this shit. And I'm just sitting there like a music enjoyer that doesn't know shit about music, and I'm just like, oh, this sounds awesome, and I'll never be able to create this in my lifetime, and that's fine, you know?
Yeah, it puts you back in the back seat, as you could say.
It puts me back in the back
It lets you
seat.
enjoy the music. If
Um,
it lets you enjoy the music. But
yeah.
what do you think is the purpose of the field recordings? And like, does this album? What do you think this album means? What is it trying to do? Like, what's it trying to make you feel?
So I think it's a very abstract album, and I love that the Godspeed guys are always like this. Our thing speaks for itself. You know,
Yeah,
they
that's why
don't
their albums. This one has a name, but the other one was F sharp
F sharp, A sharp,
or like
infinity.
yeah, or like Slow Riot for Zero. Their album names are always kind of they're all like text like uppercase, lowercase. They don't really make too much sense. They don't give you a lot to work with.
Yeah, it looks like one of those like suggested password things. From time to time, it seems like a strong password. Lift your skinny fist like a tennis to heaven. Um, I I don't know. A lot of their albums are usually like very, very, very anti-corporate, uh, very very
government too.
politically anarchist,
Yeah.
and but at the same time, I like that it's not preachy. It's not this Rage Against the Machine thing of calling out a specific politician or specific policies. Like I always find that to kind of like detract from the music. When I'm listening to a piece of music, I want to be able to put in the meaning in it.
Yeah.
And
That's
uh,
why I ask you, what do you think it means?
what I
Like,
think it means,
because this is super interpretive in a way.
no, it is. I always think that like for me, like this album is all the force is like all the forces that people attribute some sort of religious significance to, regardless of who they are. Um, and these forces being storm, static, sleep. Of well, do you think do you ascribe some sort of spiritual significance to the forces of the big forces of nature, storms, or the small sort of like very indescribable stuff, very mysterious stuff like static, or is it like that part of in the back of your head that you can't really like grasp onto, like as in sleep, you know? And
Well, that would help with sleeps because sleep opens with the field recording of Coney Island,
yeah,
which me and you always meme all the time. They don't sleep on the beach no more in
it's
Coney
funny.
Island. But it's like it has the feeling of like, oh, things aren't how they used to be, and that's like a feeling in the back of your mind,
Yeah.
and you can't get
It,
away from that feeling because it's just happening around you. It's constantly degrading too.
and there's also the idea of like sleep in the Christian sense of like, when you die, you go to sleep, you sleep forever,
Yeah,
and having a really old person be super nostalgic about shit that has been long gone at the beginning really like puts that into perspective. I really do enjoy like how suggestive these field recordings are. We have one of a supermarket for the first song, like a supermarket,
yeah,
and it was and pretty much we have that one. We have the one of the preacher on the second on static, um,
yeah.
and all these field recordings are once again hmm, they're taken in from uh how do I put this? They they touch upon like something that I truly believe in, which is like any piece of sound, any sound that can invoke an emotion belongs in music or could be categorized as music. And this
Yeah.
album exemplifies the entire way through. Like, there is a
Yeah, I know
feeling that I
you're a
get.
big preacher of that in music. I know that.
Oh, absolutely, because it's like trying to cut here and there, like, well, this is a harmonic note, this is not a harmonic note. It's
But this is
ridiculous.
come
It's
on, I know, right? Yeah.
like it's
Like
like
even
it's like
Jimi
oh,
Hendrix.
that's not singing, that's screaming. You know,
Yeah. Oh,
like
rap music is just talking
yeah,
fast.
it's just rhyming fast. It's like I don't care, bro. It's like there's been rhyming fast that has made me bawl my eyes out. All right, and if that's not art, I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. It's
Yeah.
and having that freedom, that having that balls of like, dude, like anything could be music, and uh, I don't know it, and also it adds to this thing of like, well, Godspeed, all of these songs, um, they're almost like they have a lot of crescendos. Like so, you look at the track, it's like 20 minutes, but it's not like the normal post rock thing of like it's one riff for 20 minutes, and then at the 19-minute mark, it's the loudest that riff is gonna get, and then it dies
Yeah. Yeah.
down.
Well, we gotta talk about the meme real quick because everybody on the internet memes about. That's why I said Lewis described post rock without using the word crescendo, and then most people describe post rock as being like it's the crescendo maxing genre. They just crescendo hard. They fucking 8 minute
Yeah,
crescendos. It's like edging the musical. It's crazy. And I would try to like guide people from talking about post rock just crescendo because I've heard post rock that's not super crescendo-y, like Sigur Rós, I would feel like, or Slint. It doesn't need to be. I also just think it's kind of like cheap to describe it in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's like that's just like lazy. It's how people like describe like, oh, blues is just guitar solos for days. And it's like, yeah, I mean there's some stuff that's like really guitar heavy, and then there's plenty of stuff. There's blues songs without guitars, you know? There's there's
Yeah.
guitar there's records from blues artists who are guitar players who got like maybe like four solos in there, you know? And they're like 30-second solos.
It doesn't
So
have to. Yeah.
it just it's like the caricature, but the caricature exists for a reason. The reason is that it's very, very hard to come up with a 20-minute song that isn't just infinite build-up. And
But I will
this one,
say
what?
the crescendos on this album
Are crazy.
are insane.
But
Like
I think
life changing crescendos. If I would do anything to see this album live, just to witness the glory of these 10-minute build-ups, especially on the song Sleep. Sleep has one of the greatest build-ups ever. It feels like once it hits the climax, it feels like I am literally traveling through space. I am witnessing ancient alien civilizations so powerful and glorious my mind couldn't comprehend their magnificence. It's incredible. And then this last song, like Antennas to Heaven, has like such an incredible resolution to its build up
yeah,
that like invokes a feeling. I don't even know how like this album is a kind of hard one to talk about because I don't even know how it really makes me feel. It just makes
it
me feel glorious in a
it makes
way.
you feel. Oh, there's a few. Okay, how do I put this? So there's a lot on this album that's suggestive in the sense that it sounds like it's almost that texture, but it isn't, and it gives this feeling of like, am I reading too much into it, or is that what I think it is, and which adds to the overall theme of like, I feel that the album is like God speaking through all these forms, all these like ways of
Mm,
energy, all these influences throughout our life, and we don't know it unless we really pay attention and really like put in some sort of meaning. And you brought up sleep, like in sleep, there's this guitar part. No, there's this like guitar violin part. I cannot
yeah,
tell you for
yeah,
the
it's
life
a
of
good
me
do
what it
that.
is, but it sounds like an opera singer. It sounds like someone's voice like belting out. But there's like obvious
Yeah, I know
there's
what you're
things that
talking
like
about.
as the song continues, it's very obvious it's not someone's voice, but it's enough to it still gives this sense of like it's like uncanny valley. It's like
I
is
imagine it.
someone there? You know?
I imagine it, and it's just an ode to like how this album can make you like feel weird things. That part you're talking about.
Yeah,
I am a sailor, and I'm in the ocean, and that is a siren's call
yeah,
because it sounds like a whale, but it's not a human whale. It's like it's otherworldly. It's weird,
yeah,
and this album is full of shit like that. Of like, what is that? Like, and it leads you
yeah.
to your imagination.
And
Yeah.
with the crescendos, what really makes these crescendos like fantastic. Like, it's not that they start from the first track, from the beginning of the track. What will happen a lot is that they'll build up for maybe like 6 7 minutes, break down, have what sounds like atmosphere, ambiance, and then this slowly builds up to a different part of the song with these little bits of ambiance that like they bring up in the mix, and then they respond to it musically, and it once again gives the feeling of like it's this natural progression. There's like this living thing growing from dead things.
Yeah.
It also gives the idea of like any one sound cannot be taken for granted. There's a reason why they put it there. And it's not just like, oh, that's what the amp sounds like when you finish playing the song, and it's just like feedback and crazy. Like, nope, they bring it back in. They don't waste a single texture, and I think that's mind blowing. There's so many transitions on this album that I think are like they make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And once again, and it feeds into the idea of any texture can be sound, and that you can put your meaning in there if you really want to. And oh, that's something else. So I'm talking about the invoking meaning thing because at least in my philosophy, music is not so much like the actual sound that's coming out of a record, but what
Yeah.
happens in the listener's mind as you're listening to it.
Yeah, that's the Borges
Yeah,
mindset you got going on.
it because it, did I tell you my grandpa gave me a Charlie Parker record from the 30s? He gave me a Charlie
Yeah,
Parker
let
record.
me
No, no,
let
go
me just
ahead.
explain real quick. The Borges thing is, for anyone who doesn't know, Borges is a writer. One of the things he
Hmm.
says is that reading, he writes short stories. So he says reading a story is a creative act in its own because everybody interprets a story in its own way, and you can't
Hmm.
just think about what it looks like on paper, but how is the person going to interpret it, how they're going to take it, because everybody's going to take it differently. And every
Hmm.
time someone reads a book, it is written again. Just short
Yeah.
summary, what I say. So when Lewis is thinking, when Lewis says it's how you take it in too, is the music itself. And anybody listens to this album, especially this album, Lift Your Skinny Fist, you are gonna take it a different way, and it's almost like everybody's experience with the album is unique in its own way.
Hmm.
But
Uh,
go go to what you were saying about the Charlie Parker record.
no, the Charlie Parker record. My Charlie Parker to uh, any traditional jazz artist, he's a god. He has played some of the craziest saxophone lines of all time. He has
Yeah,
single-handedly invented bebop. And my grandpa gave me this record. Hey, what? This is just noise to me. You can have it. He's like, I hated this record. And
yeah,
it's not that me and my grandpa listened to two different records. It's just that there is a certain um there's a certain meaning that I place on what Charlie Parker is playing that he doesn't place, and or vice versa. And it's almost like all music, especially like without lyrics, is sort of like this sonic sculpture. It has a title, I don't know, like Storm, right? And you're watching this sculpture being formed in real time. And as it's being formed in real time, it calls to your mind various experiences that you've had, other pieces of music you've listened to, maybe even like movies or media that you enjoy, and it plays around with those things. And what I'm getting at is that I feel like the creators of this album understood that super well. They understood that when they put in textures that they don't want to make it super obvious. They want people to put in their meaning, put in their what they think this thing even looks like. You know, that's
yeah,
also something like I really enjoy that is a super long song with sections, but like the sections aren't like super clear. There's no like part A, part B, part C. So like have you seen the map for this record? There's a map of all the sections, not just the songs, but like the sections inside of the songs. It doesn't have
no,
it's low key not accurate.
yeah,
Um, and it's like um, and there's arguments as to which part of the song it's actually talking about.
yeah.
And
I found it. It's in the record. If you buy the vinyl, it's in the
yeah,
record.
exactly.
Yeah,
Um, but if you look at it, I mean, you could use that for yourself. But I think the joy of like not having the song split up and because we can have seamless tradition. We live in the digital age, like that's possible. But
hmm,
um, having and they record this in the CD age, so it's still possible. Um, but I feel like that is very much like you as the listener. You can split this up however you want. You know, you can add the meaning that you want in this very abstract sculpture. Um, and even more so, that that meaning becomes even more interesting to implant once you have to do the debate. Is that noise? Is that ambiance? Is that a field recording? Is that a guitar? Is that a violin? Is that a person's voice? What is that?
Yeah,
You
is
know?
that God? Like, is
Is
that the
he?
sound of the skinny fists themselves?
Yeah, yeah. And there's this constant feeling of like um you're picking up on something. You're taking in frequencies and like an antenna, and you have to like tune into. You got to lean into it, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I really like this record. I really like what it represents. I really like how it touches upon political themes, spiritual themes, post-apocalyptic themes in ways that don't feel um, preachy, don't feel dismissive of other people's beliefs.
It's very
That
ambiguous with
it's very
those.
ambiguous
Yeah.
and it's super not cliche. Like there's a lot of records that I listen to of like spiritual themes, which I enjoy because I think that music is probably the best vehicle for engaging with those themes of existence, with the themes of direct experience, with the themes of the feeling of a higher power and how it can,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe the feeling of lack of higher power, you know?
Because music is transcendental. It makes you feel things that you wouldn't have otherwise feel. And it's the best way to feel spiritual stuff, which is a transcendental thing in its own right, is to sort of conduit through music.
Hmm.
And many artists have championed that, like John Coltrane, Alice Coltrane, Miles Davis, stuff like that,
Hmm. And
and Bach too. You know,
yeah,
and that's music's power right there.
yeah, and you just have to hear it. There's not none of this like at least like when you have mythologies or you have like stories or literature, there's got some cultural context you need. You need to know that I don't know. You need to understand like the Greek pantheon if you're gonna read a Greek myth. You need to
Yeah.
understand what the gods can or cannot do if you're reading I don't know in Indian myth or if you're reading any transcendental philosophy. You got to understand which philosophers they're talking about, and music is just direct. You feel it. It is not, and it touches upon what I think is very important for anyone's spiritual tradition or existential tradition, which is um, it's much more important how you feel than what you think.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because thinking, over rationalization, all that stuff is like the antithesis of doing something that inherently may not. I don't want to say meaningless, but like the meaning isn't obvious. It's something you have to seek, and music being feeling those things is way better than sitting there and rationalizing them, because then we're humans, we're going to over rationalize, we're going to get in our head, we're going to question things. It's not how you should really take in something spiritual.
yeah, and then you're
It
just gonna focus
itself is
on
a metaphysical thing.
what is a metaphysical thing.
Like like spiritual beliefs and
Oh,
whatnot,
yeah, yeah.
spiritual things. It's a metaphysical
It,
thing. You can't rationalize it that hard.
yeah, and then you're just gonna focus on like what you don't have, what you don't know. And music, this album, there's so many things about this album. I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. But and that makes it a new experience every time. Every single time I listen to his record, there's some other like, I could see it this way. I could build this sculpture in my mind this way, given I don't know. Now that I've listened to Arvo Part, now that I've listened to Reich, now that I've listened to uh, Sonic Youth or Velvet Underground or Fugazi or Black Flag or like black metal. There's also a whole lot of black metal influence on this record that I probably am not aware of because I've listened to five black metal albums in my lifetime. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's and we haven't even touched upon like the prog rock influence on this record. Like this record is really obviously giving Larks, giving Echoes.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
A lot of like King Crimson in this right here.
specifically just the Robert Fripp like noise experiments from the early 70s, you know. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
it
large.
touches upon so much, and this is why I love it. And this record is the top 10 for me. Slowly cementing itself in the top 10.
Yeah, as it should. Because I think most people hear this. My favorite thing to do is to get someone in a car on a long road trip, lock the doors and windows, and then play this album.
You know,
And most people's reaction is that it's very scary.
which is hilarious because it is the brightest album that they got.
Oh yeah, they've made way scarier.
Yeah, no, you put on F sharp, A sharp, Infinity. That shit is scary.
This shit is way
That shit
scarier.
is dark. Um, which I enjoy, but you know that could very easily be like, please take me home tier.
I'd be like, get me out of the car. Like, stop.
Yeah, at least with this album, it starts off really optimistic, so you know it kind of misleads you. Um,
I think it ends really
it ends very
optimistic.
optimistically. You
Well,
just gotta power through static, bro.
but also like the ending, like the last like 6 minutes of Antennas to Heaven is just like just super ambient static of I don't know how to describe it. It feels like the sounds of a whale or something. It's just
Yeah, of just
drone.
life on Earth in general. Like it's angelic, it's freaky, it's awe-inspiring, it's optimistic, but also like super sharp, like super like the noises are slightly not irritating. They're how do I put it uh just not dissonant. It's like a texture that sort of like nails on a chalkboard. Um,
Unpleasant.
it's like it's a type of unpleasant. It's like
Argue.
yeah, yeah, but like but um it's like shrieking almost. It's like shrieking and singing at the same
Yeah,
time, but also in the
yeah,
distance, but also beautiful. And it's that's something else why I believe this is a truly spiritual album. There's so many moments of this album that have that like that awe, that awesome feeling in the traditional sense of the word of like, oh my fucking god, I cannot tell if I'm supposed to be really scared or just like mesmerized by the beauty at the same time.
yeah. I feel like you
It's
get
got
like
that feeling of be not afraid. The entire album, the entire album through.
this album is a biblically accurate angel. This entire album is.
Actually, 100%. Um,
That- That's
but
how you
yeah,
describe it.
there's a lot of lore out there. I could have covered the Godspeed lore, but there's plenty of people who are already doing that much better than I am. What you got to know is that these people do not talk to the media except for Ifram. And
Oh, who's it?
Ifram is one of the guitar players. He says that he's not the leader; he is the spokesperson. A lot of people have attributed him the leader because he's the only one who's like come out and publicly like done interviews and was also part of the original lineup pre 2000. But
Yeah.
from what he describes is that this band started off as a three piece that would do like punk, and then in a very punk sense, they're like anyone who we think is cool and wants to be in a band can join this band, and we'll make things work. And and then before you know it, it was 15 dudes.
Yeah,
Where it's
this
like,
I'm looking
well,
at the personnel for this album. There's 9 people.
yeah,
There's 2 drummers. There's 2 bass guitars. There are 3 guitarists, and there's a violin and cello player.
yeah. Wow,
And there's
that's. It sounds like 20 people on the record. I'm not gonna lie.
I
that
don't
that
know actually. I don't know because I've heard crazy things being done with 3 people, and I've heard really tight things being done with like 8 people. I don't know this could be 3, this could be 20, this could be I don't know
Very, very
with this album.
amorphous album. Once again, biblically
Yes.
accurate angel. I never know what's gonna come out of it. There's, there's like, I remember revisiting this album in preparation for this podcast, and uh, you know the part in Storm where the glockenspiel comes out.
Yeah.
That always takes me by surprise. I'm always like, like it's like where did that even come from? Like
Yeah. I
eh,
don't how do where do you start writing this album?
that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah,
I
like
literally cannot think of jamming this out. I can't think of writing it out. I definitely don't. It's definitely so big and so. It doesn't feel like it has the personal touch of like a single songwriter. It's so well collaborated, and I think that that also gets added by the mystique of the band of like, they're a band of a bunch of rotating musicians. Most of them do not speak to the media. Um, like, and it gives us this like impenetrableness to Godspeed You Black Emperor.
so
You
mysterious,
can't
so mysterious.
imagine what the band looks
Yeah.
like in the studio. And every
Yeah.
single song has completely different instrumentation as well. So even when you put on another Godspeed you have no idea if you're going to be hit with drums or cellos or guitars or horns or glockenspiel or piano or just noise in general or just like tape loops. Um, it
Am I
I find that very
tripping?
exciting. Hmm?
Am I tripping? Or do some of the songs randomly like cut like by tape? Or like it's really subtle.
Like what do you
Like
mean
like
like in the middle of the songs?
like they there's one in the beginning of Sleep, I think, where it just like kind of skips and tape in the beginning. Like really like really like subtly.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's I'm pretty sure that's got way more to do with the fact that they're using like a field recording. Because with the field recording, the
Oh,
if you're moving around with the mic, the atmosphere is going to change even slightly for a few seconds. So like if you were to edit it without like if you were to like do like a sort of a collage thing, it would be very obvious. Even with
wait.
some,
Are the field recordings, did they make them? I thought they found them.
no, but you can find them and
Or
still edit them.
no, I'm saying like I thought they like it was like a clip from a documentary or something. Or are you saying they actually recorded these themselves and
Oh
they're
no, no,
people they found?
these are collected, but then they heavily edit them. So like the
Oh,
preacher at the beginning of Static is slowed down and pitched down, and
yeah,
um and it's like various segments of his. So it has that like non sequitur feel because they specifically
yeah.
cut out like segments transitions of thought, and it goes from one idea to another, and it gives it this like, oh, where's this going sort of feeling, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The time is distorted on this
Time is
album
so
too.
distorted on this record, and yeah, no, I yes, I noticed that way more on F sharp, A sharp, Infinity.
Yeah,
There's those field recordings are very obviously like, in there, you know.
yeah.
Um,
Well, the time distorted thing also really applies with the song structure thing you're saying, because not all the crescendos are just like here's the crescendo, here's the resolution, where like it goes in, it goes back to atmosphere, it plays another motif that becomes important later to the song, then it goes to the crescendo, and then that's not even the end of the song, it keeps going.
oh, and there's no one melody playing at any given time. It's like
Yeah,
competing melodies at one time. There's no
yeah,
solos. Like you can't say it's like oh the guitar solo on Sleep, the guitar solo on Static. It's and you can't like there are parts where like some instruments shine through, but it's never like there's no one instrument being the main star for that one part, except for like the like when it dies down, it's just the piano, or it builds up at the beginning of Sleep and it's just a guitar, and you could say like oh those are like the featured, but really they're the rhythm instrument playing playing before a build up, or playing like a cool down, uh, the opposite of
Yeah,
build
like a
up.
coda.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
wi- and that combined with the idea that there's no lyrics, there's no vocals, there's no chorus, there's no like typical structure you find here. This is a sculpture of noise. Um,
It
it,
is like a
yeah,
classical piece.
yeah, I absolutely love it. And and everyone thinks I'm reading too much into the spiritual ideas of the record. Um, First of all, it's my interpretation. So, uh,
Yeah, just know that for this whole
he,
podcast, we're literally just talking out of our asses. This is
we're
literally
talking
just
out of our asses.
it,
And second of all, I'm making that tie because if we're going back to composers, there's like this there's minimalism, and then there's holy minimalism, which does a bunch of the techniques I described, such as making stuff sound very natural, making stuff sound kind of like voices, but suggestive voices, and natural in the sense that like we're slowly evolving from one place to another. We're slowly changing the rhythms. No hard cuts. It's growing into a different part, and there's a lot of space and a lot of focus on ambience, um, that these composers in holy minimalism are using specifically, and on record, to go on to say they're specifically using these techniques and these elements to make spiritual statements. The record you listen to, the Arvo Part record, um,
yeah.
is like the example of that. Like he wanted to make a spiritual album that wasn't preaching the slightest, that had a sense of space, atmosphere, of natural breathing, natural growing, um, because he felt that was his way of transmitting how he feels the beauty and awe of the divine to be like. And it's listening to that record and listening to Godspeed back to back, you can see a lot of the techniques used for the same exact things, for the same exact feelings. And what I like about Godspeed is that they take that and they do the rock thing with it. They put it in language for the layman. Uh, the layman
Yeah.
being like the punks that they grew up with. The 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 guys that won't sit down for for a classical piece, but they'll sit down for like a really cool sounding guitar part, or they'll sit down for something that has some rock drums to it. And yeah, no, it's opened up, at least for me, because I got exposed to this album like high school before I really dug into like modern classical. But it's opened the doors of like me seeing what the composers are doing and be like, oh, these guys are not like super head up their ass pretentious. Unless Godspeed is also in your definition. But these guys are actually talking about real stuff and trying to really describe how they feel, and not trying to do it to impress others. You know?
Yeah, it's just what they're trying to describe is something so ethereal and spiritual. It may just to a layman may be like, oh, he's just hooning his horn, whoa, whatever.
It's like,
And
oh, there's like 2 minutes of the room sound. Is like, I guess they left the mic on. I guess they wanted me to wait for the song to start. You know,
that's why
it's
that's why I'm always against that kind of thought for albums like this, and I always have the belief that everything is there for a reason, which
100%.
also trips me out more because then I'm like, what the fuck is this? Why is this here?
Yeah,
You know?
why are we now in a grocery station, at a grocery store, listening to the speakers talk about some person that's gonna come and offer me services, you know?
Yeah,
Why is
so I
there?
always give the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
Like it's here for a reason.
yeah,
I will say though, when you talk about Tabula Rasa, if you're listening to this and you want more of what Lift Your Skinny Fist is, and you're okay with classical, definitely listen to that album because I can 100% can feel the influence. that has on this.
Yeah. Um, is there any closing statements for Godspeed or any closing questions?
Statement: this album has made me hear sounds that I don't think any other album will ever do ever,
Mm.
and has made me experience music in ways that no other album will. Well, this entire band actually does this. It will make me experience music in ways that no other album will ever do. It's a very powerful, unique experience, and it's really just the core of feeling something, that the power that music has to make you feel like that. Many of the sounds you hear on it are almost like primal in the way, like they invoke something in you, like the album before, Funeral, still a fantastic album. It's very like literal with its interpretation and whatnot. This is an album about childhood loss. This album, it's like you don't even need it to be literal. It's like it's in your DNA to feel these sounds. It's
Yeah.
just they just naturally do things to you. And people say that like certain frequencies can control the human mind and stuff like that. I think they're onto something after hearing this album, because it's just the guttural sounds of the void that this thing can produce.
Yeah.
You just feel it. And
In
that's
fact,
why either you like it, you
yeah.
rock with it like us, or that's why this album might turn you off, because it might be like too provocative in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like it will invoke. I dare you to sit down and pay attention to this record and not feel anything. I dare you. I like
I go past that.
like I'm so like that. You know what? That's like how I check if you're human or not.
That's how they will in the future.
You
In
don't
the
necessarily have to like it. You might even hate it, but like you can't be like, I've listened to this before. Ah, that's what they're gonna do there. Yeah, I know. No.
yeah,
Um. Also, shout out to the drummers. Um. I I really think that they're the unsung heroes of this album, and they're the reason why this album, at least for me, is much more interesting and appealing than a lot of the classical pieces that did inspire it. Even though I really love Arvo Part, I really like Henrik Goric. I'm so butchering that.
yeah,
I'm gonna post that in the description though. Symphony Number 3. Please listen to that, or Scriabin or Steve Reich. Um, those are cool and all, but like there's something about the constantly changing rhythm. They constantly like throwing in patterns, throwing in drum fills. That sort of like drive that adds a lot, and make sure that this album stays post rock and not classical.
yeah. And I think they're helping a bit to make it a bit more palatable, because sometimes the drums are kicking on this piece.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely fantastic. Very tight drumming.
I think that characterizes post rock a lot for me too. Is the drums tend to drive the songs a lot,
Hmm.
as opposed to like a guitar riff would or something like that.
Yeah, because when everything else is washed out, the only
Yeah,
instrument that you can't, well, people have, but you normally not gonna put like a crazy amount of effects on is the drums.
yeah, yeah,
So it's like the tether to planet Earth in these like super ethereal, super alien um, albums. Even albums that I think are like semi post rock, like Kid A, is like it's
yeah.
always the percussion that's really like driving the song.
But even like shoegaze, like in Loveless, it's
Oh
the
yeah, true.
percussion that's like poppy and like kind of like dancey in a way, while the rest is all ethereal guitar tones and stuff.
I'm not so sure for well, I see where you're coming from. I think for Loveless, it's there's still like the vocal hooks. The vocal hooks really
Oh yeah, yeah,
like they bring it down to planet Earth and
yeah. Hey, at the end of the day, Loveless is a pop record. When you really
yeah,
like just take out all the vacuums and then you just hear it, it's just like a Beatles record essentially.
yeah. It's the greatest vacuum pop album of all time.
But we will do this. We will do Loveless one day. We will do Sonic Youth another day. But you have anything else for Lift Your Skinny Fist?
Um, Uh, one for Skinny Fist, maybe not so much, but for this whole podcast, um, I do want to say that any piece of sound that invokes motion can be music within the mind of the listener, and that means that the message of us picking these two records and for Skinny Fist in some way, right, is the idea that there is no highbrow, lowbrow music. Like that sort of like differentiation is absolute fucking bullshit. These records shine in their own way, and just because one seems closer to what we usually hear than another doesn't make the other one good or doesn't make the other one bad. And um and yeah, no, just uh God bless music. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I think for the podcast sake, to talk about sort of our philosophy a little bit, we don't really like to like throw stuff into like a basket. Like we
Yeah.
don't look at like, oh, this is pretentious. Oh, this is like just simple pop. This is like this is girl music. This is boy music. To us, it's just music, and I'm really looking at it like more personally in a way. Like, what is this guy trying to do?
Yeah.
You know? And did he do it really well? And did it make me feel like a really something unique?
Yeah.
And it's very like we try to both me and Lewis try to like just strip any kind of outside influence like bias from our mind when we listen to music. We just go right into it like blank slates walking in.
I'm not sure if, it's like blank slate, but I understand that the that no music comes out of a vacuum.
Yeah.
That every single time I listen to a piece, there is some sort of commentary on other pieces, and I always find that. Oh, that's also another thing I find very fascinating about music as an art form in general is that um, you're you're constantly reacting to the music that's being created, that's already been created, and that you're listening to, and so there's this idea that like people from all different types of cultures, levels of technology, levels of skill, are trying to touch upon the same feelings. And I think a joy of music is seeing all the different ways people can tackle those feelings. The fact that these classical composers, these noise rock artists are touching upon the same things, which is even with like they're touching upon the same like feelings, same aspects of their experience. Um, Even sometimes in contradictory ways, but those contradictory ways say a lot about that specific experience. Um, One thing I wanted to touch on that I thought was super interesting, and this seems to be like a contention among like some Godspeed fans, is that that the album that me ascribing spiritual significance to it is one way of seeing it. Some people have viewed this album as incredibly nihilistic, along with other Godspeed albums. Mostly because that's like the thought process in noise rock. So in modern
Yeah.
classical, using these textures, using like all these different things that are considered like unmusical, is because meaning can be found anywhere. And noise rock is much more like there is no meaning found anywhere, so you can do whatever the fuck you want. You know,
Yeah, it's the Nietzsche of music.
it 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 it, it is, and it's so interesting seeing both of those worlds collide in this record. Like, is it suggesting something? Is it not? Is it just noise? Maybe not even the musicians want to answer that question.
Well, they don't.
They
Essentially, there's
don't.
like nothing in.
They
Yeah.
they don't, and God bless them, because now I can. If my definition of music is what's created in here when I listen to a record, I get to create music with them.
And that's the fun.
That is the fun.
That is the fun of music. I think that's a good place to end this episode on, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for listening. Welcome back to our revival. We will have more every 2 weeks or so. Comment any suggestions you guys have. Like the video if you liked it. Thank you for listening, everybody. Have a Godspeed, y'all, and have a blessed day. Good? Alrighty.